before we do, I do want to cover this because I feel this is one of the big misconceptions within the misconception is why do podcasters believe that the only way to generate revenue and to monetize their podcast is to get sponsorship on their show?
It's because most people in the initial phases of any medium are following the leader. And so when they see a big podcaster and the big podcaster has the ad, they associate that as the big opportunity. And when you really break down, let's just call them ads for now. We won't even talk about sponsors. It's a commodity. You are a commodity because a big company goes to a smaller company, the middleman, and says, I want to get on as many podcasts as possible. And that smaller company goes to you, the podcaster, and says, we can put an ad in your podcast. And they give you pennies on the dollar, and they try to find the lowest bidder to get that ad on as many podcasts as possible to get that exposure. So unless you have millions of downloads, which you don't actually need to make a living, you're not making any real money. You're making less than minimum wage for producing this content and basically letting some corporation ride on your back for pennies on the dollar. And if I came up to you and said, hey, I'll give you $0.25, let me talk on your podcast, you'd be like, no, I don't know. I'm not taking $0.25. Yet somehow podcasters sign up for these dynamically inserted ads thinking that if they just get that magic number that they're going to make money through that medium. And so I don't think it's people necessarily wanting that. They think that that is the only opportunity. They're uninformed, which is why this podcast will be very helpful to them.
I think a lot of it also stems from a very old school mentality where radio, TV, magazines, billboards, you know, insert your favorite old school medium of advertisement here. This is how it was always done. And I think that it was just, for whatever reason, this natural progression that in order for me to get to a certain point, I need to have a certain amount of sponsorship to get me there, because that's how it's always been done before. That's how radio shows have stayed on the air. Well, guess what? This is a whole new medium. Yeah. And advertising in and of itself has completely changed. Companies across the globe have had to adapt to a new way of reaching people. And it's mainly through the internet. I mean, I still see, and it's still, you know, I still scratch my head when I see billboards. And I wonder about the effectiveness of these static paper billboards that people are still investing thousands of dollars into having. And I don't know. I don't have that data in front of me, nor have I been bored enough to go look it up to see exactly what the numbers were. But my point is that I think that when podcasters start their show, they're thinking along the lines of old school radio. And if they came from old school radio, then that was probably drilled into them from day one, that the more people you get listening, the more you can generate of the possibility of bringing on a big sponsor, and they're going to give you all this money and so on and so forth. And I think we get this glitz and grandeur mentality built up in our minds that, okay, I got to get there. And the faster I get there, the better this is going to be. I think that takes away from the value you're creating because your focus isn't in the right place. So keep your focus on the value. And again, I go back to the cart before the horse analogy from before. If you keep your focus on the value, you have a bigger sample case that you could present to a potential sponsor down the road if that's the path you want to take. And that's not through the dynamic ads that get inserted that, to me, drag the value of a show down, because I don't need to hear in a 20-minute podcast, which I actually was questioned about this when I interviewed on another podcast, why my 5 to 10 minute show in series 1 of Pod Theory didn't have more ads. Well, that was why. Even for myself, I didn't feel that I needed to just pepper this little short 5 to 10 minute show with a bunch of advertisements. I felt that the value was going to be within the content, and that's something we can all control. So let's keep our focus where it needs to be, build valuable content, and then start presenting that to a potential sponsor that is congruent with your show and your message, because you want your audience to actually pay attention to that sponsorship. because then they may in turn follow their call to action that shows the sponsor that it's working, so on and so forth. But the main point being is that we don't want to get so far removed from the value that we're providing in regards to trying to bring a sponsor in that the whole point gets lost.